Good evening and welcome everyone to this meeting of the Western Area Planning Committee, especially those members of the public who are watching the streaming of this meeting online. I am Councillor Clive Hooker and I'm chairman of this planning committee. Members joining me on the committee this evening are Councillors Andy Moore, Phil Barnett, Jeff Cant, Hilary Cole, Caroline Culver, Dennis Bennyworth, Tony Vickers, who's the vice chairman, and Howard Wollaston. And the officers in attendance to advise and support the meeting this evening are Simon Till and David Pearson, our two planning officers, and Sharon Armour is my legal advisor this evening, and Jenny Legg will clerk the meeting. I'm also assisted by Kevin Griffin, who will be the Zoom host for the evening. I will now ask Mrs. Legg to remind members and the attendees about the way we conduct Zoom meetings within the council. Mrs. Legg.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. Standard Zoom reminders will be shared shortly on screen. In addition to those points, if it becomes necessary for any members to telephone into the meeting, they won't be able to signal to speak. Therefore, once everyone has raised the Zoom hand as spoken, I will ask the Chairman to invite anyone who is joined by telephone to speak in order. Voting on planning applications will take place via a named vote. Members will be asked in turn by the legal advisor how they wish to vote, by stating they are for or against the proposal, or if they wish to abstain. Please remember to unmute yourself when voting. Any other votes will be conducted via a show of actual hands during the meeting. Unless the committee asks for the vote to be recorded, the outcome of the named vote will not appear in the minutes. So anyone wishing their vote to be recorded must indicate this before the vote is taken. If we need to adjourn the meeting at any point, the chairman will adjourn and advise the committee of the revised time and date of the meeting. If it's a short adjournment, you will be able to rejoin the Zoom meeting. Otherwise, a fresh appointment will be sent out. Do members have any questions about the way in which the meeting will be conducted before we proceed?
Thank you very much, Mrs. Legg. We now move on to item 1 of the agenda. Apologies. Do we have any apologies, please?
We do. We have apologies from Councillor Abbs, and he will be substituted for by Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. Item 2 on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of October. And I'll just remind members that the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of November will be carried over to our next meeting, which will be held on the 25th of November. These are held back because the agenda was printed before the minutes of that meeting were concluded. So members, do you have any observations, please, on the minutes of the 14th of October? Councillor Culver.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, on page 20, there's a bullet point that begins with the word finally. And in there's a sentence, it makes mention of things that I talked about, but there's one sentence that doesn't make sense. It says also her understanding was, and I think that, I don't know if Mrs. Armour's got that to hand, but I think that sentence needs to be split in two because the two clauses of the sentence don't make sense together. Okay. So one refers to the fact that the staff at Carbosynth are mainly from outside the ward, and then it talks about the noise impact on residents. And those two things are not related. So it's quite a pernickety point, but the sentence at the moment doesn't make sense.
Okay, I'll have a look at it and sort it out. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Mrs. Legg. And then on page 25, it talks about conditions for Carbosynth, timing control details. And it says overnight. I think we talked about timings for that. So is it possible to add to that the specific timings we agreed? We could go back and look.
Listen to the audio, please, on that one.
Wonderful, thank you, Chairman. And on page 26, under point 10, I was just wondering if we were going to include something in there about the constant vibrational noise in the background. If again we could have a look, listen to the recording of the meeting, please. And last but not least, an incredibly pernickety point, and I hope I get an award for this. The full council meeting where we talked about changes to speaking rights was the 10th of September, not the 10th of October.
Okay.
Hopefully I get an award for that.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Caroline Culver. Any more? No more blue hands. Thank you very much. Then members, do I have a proposer for those minutes, please? Hand up. Councillor Cole, and a second. Councillor Wollaston, thank you. So I have a proposer and a seconder. So if you could just indicate by raising your hands if your agreement that those minutes are, apart from the comments made by Councillor Calder, a true record of that meeting. Mrs. Clark, Mrs. Armour.
I can't quite see Councillor Cant's hand, but is it up? Okay. Yeah, so everyone except Councillor Vickers.
Because
I wasn't there.
Thank you. So you're abstaining. Thank you. I will therefore, those minutes are approved and I will sign them. Ms. Armour. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to item 3. Members, declarations of interest, please. Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Chairman, I am a member of Newby Town Council and also a member of its Planning and Highways Committee, and where applications are discussed tonight, which had previously been discussed at the Planning and Highways of Newby Town Council, I will look at and weigh up all the evidence that's supplied to me tonight and make judgment on that evidence and not how I voted previously.
Councillor Pennyworth.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I just lost the picture there. Yeah, in relation to agenda item number 3, I'd just like to state that I work in the equestrian world, which includes racing, though I don't have any connection with the owners of the land subject to the application this evening, nor to the business operating there.
Councillor Pennyworth. Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, in addition to what Councillor Barnett said, being a member of Newby Town Council Planning and Highways, I think I also ought to declare that my wife is another ward member and has shown her opposition to the application in number 1. But I don't necessarily share her views, and I will listen to the evidence.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Mrs. Legg, they are recorded. Thank you. Item 4, members on the agenda.
Sorry, Chair.
Councillor Moore, yeah.
Could I add my membership of Newby Town Council Planning and Highways to those for Councillor Barnett and Councillor Vickers, and also in respect of item 1, I have been lobbied by one of the objectors, but I don't consider that stops me participating in the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Any more? We do. Councillor Pennyworth back.
Back in again, Chairman. Thank you. Just to say that I have been lobbied by both the applicant and the agent. Sorry, not the agent rather, and the neighbouring resident in agenda item number 3.
Thank you. Is that clear enough for you, Mrs. Legg?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Pennyworth, you put your hand down. Thank you for non-confusion. Item 4 on the agenda, moving on to the planning applications. We have 3 applications this evening, 2 at 11 to 13 Marketplace in Newbury, and the first one is changing use of the ground floor of a betting shop to an adult gaming and amusement centre, and the second application is the installation of associated signage, which will be explained to us later by the planning officer. And the third application is Denford House, Hungerford, and that's the erection of a 1-bedroom lodge. So they are the applications before us this evening. I will quickly go through the introduction as always, just for the benefit of those watching online. And so it will go as such. The officers will present the application to the committee. The drawings and plans and any deemed relevant material submitted on the planning file will be shown as part of that presentation. I will then invite the clerk to read out the 500-word submissions. These will be shown on the screen for additional clarity from the following groups and in this order. Firstly, the parish council, then any objectors, any supporters, and then the applicant and the agent. On the conclusion of each of those 4 500-word submissions, I will ask members if they have any questions of clarification on that submission or of the individual 500-word submissions, of which the members of the committee will have received copies and will have read. If they have, the attendees will be invited into the meeting to answer those questions. If they do not have any questions, the attendees will not be invited into the meeting. On conclusion of answering any questions, the attendees will be invited back into the waiting room. When that is concluded, I will then invite the ward members to speak. They will have 5 minutes to present their case. Members may then ask questions of clarification of the ward members' presentation. The committee members will then have the opportunity to ask questions of clarification of the officers' presentations. The committee will then debate the application and vote on the decision. So we'll now move on to the first application before the committee this evening, and that is application 20/01326. This is a full planning application at 11 to 13 Marketplace, Newbury. And the proposal I will ask Mr. Pearson to present to the committee. Mr. Pearson, this has come to committee because of 10 letters of objection.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, members, this is an application to change the use of the ground floor of 11 to 13 Marketplace, Newbury, from a sui generis use of a bedding shop to another sui generis use as a gaming and an amusement centre. For the benefit of any public who may be watching, a sui generis use is a use that on its own that doesn't fall inside any of the use classes in the use class order. The full application also references the installation of signage, but as that is forms part of the item 2 application for advertisement consent, in this presentation I will focus on the change of use. As mentioned by the chairman, this application came to committee because more than 10 objections were received, and also a petition of over approximately 200 signatures also raising objections to the proposal was received. It's also worth noting that the Town Council raised objections to the proposal, and their comments are set out in your agenda. Continuing with consultees, 2 key consultees have raised no objection. The first is our colleagues from Environmental Health, and the second is from the local police. As is mentioned in the body of the report, the use proposed is also subject to a separate requirement for a premises licence, which was considered earlier in the week by another committee of the council. At the moment, officers have not been advised of what the outcome was of that application for a licence. So I'm afraid I'm not able to advise you on that point. The key issues are whether or not the use in this location is acceptable, and the main concern in considering that is, in officer view, whether there would be noise and disturbance for the occupants of the 2 flats above the flats on 2 floors above the ground floor area where the proposed use is going to take place, and also for neighbouring properties, and also whether or not the use would generate any noise outside the premises from people using the premises, particularly late at night. The applicant has made it clear that it is envisaged that the premises will be used for the proposed purpose for 24 hours a day. And in the submissions that came with the application, the applicant has produced a document which details how they believe this use can be operated in the way they suggest without causing a nuisance, and gives examples of where this has happened in other localities. Also referenced on your update sheet is more information about the noise survey and its conclusions that was undertaken by the applicant. And the survey concludes that with some small remediation measures, the use will not produce noise that would be a nuisance either to the people living above the properties either side, or indeed the wider area. And this information was available to environmental health colleagues. And as I previously mentioned, they've raised no objection to this proposal on the grounds of possible noise nuisance. Accordingly, a condition is proposed which requires that the proposed remediation measures for noise are implemented before the use commences. I alluded earlier to the previous use of the site, which was for a betting shop. And many of the same concerns were raised in 2013 when the application was made to use the premises as a betting shop. It does appear to be the case that the betting shop use carried on for a number of years in that property without causing any nuisance. And no evidence has been provided to suggest that this proposed use couldn't carry on in much the same manner as the previous use, with much the same low-level impact. Much of the objection raised by objectors concerns whether or not more gambling facilities in the town is a good thing or a bad thing, and alludes really to moral issues. And whilst we may all have our own views on gambling as a pastime, I have to advise members that these types of issues aren't material planning considerations, and it would be unwise to include them in your deliberations. For officers, the issues are clear. It's purely a matter of assessing whether or not this proposed use will have any adverse impacts at a level which would warrant refusal. And officers have reached the conclusion that it won't, and therefore are recommending conditional approval subject to the conditions in your agenda and mentioned on the update sheet. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. I'll just wait for the screen to clear. Thank you. We are all back. Members, we now come to the submissions that have been received from the public, and I'll ask Mrs. Legg to read these out. But just to give you a bit of an informative on this, we've had no submissions from the Town Council, no objectors, no supporters, but we do have a submission from the agent. Mrs. Legg, could you read that submission out, please?
Chairman, just share my screen with you. And this is for the agent. Make that slightly bigger. There we go. So the COVID-19 global pandemic is an unforeseen crisis that has decimated town centres, leaving many vacancies in its wake. Tens of thousands of stores have been closed at the cost of hundreds and thousands of jobs across the country. The recent Uses Class Order Amendment has introduced Class E, which seeks to introduce flexibility into our commercial centres by reducing regulations. While the proposal does not explicitly involve the new Class E, it must be acknowledged that the government's approach is one of pragmatism. It seeks to remove unnecessary use class restrictions, giving the best chance of achieving economic recovery. It is recognised that there have been several objections from the public in relation to the application. These are primarily based on concerns about gambling and noise. I set out as follows the ways in which these perceived concerns have been addressed and justified. Firstly, regarding the gambling concern, the current lawful use of 11 to 13 Marketplace is as a betting shop, sui generis, meaning that if this application is refused, the premises can legally trade as such without the requirement of planning permission. The proposed Adult Gaming Centre, AGC, comprises a softer form of gambling with strict safeguards in place to ensure the health and well-being of its customers, in line with guidance from the Gambling Commission. Your attention is drawn to the applicant's operational brochure, which sets out the host of measures taken to ensure responsible operation. Secondly, regarding the noise concern, I would also like to draw members' attention to the noise assessment and lack of objection from Environmental Health and Thames Valley Police, both of whom were consulted. The assessment concludes that a 24-hour use will be acceptable in noise terms, subject to minor internal alterations. By virtue of its central location and well-managed operation, there are not considered to be any risks from noise to nearby residents, thus facilitating our harmonious coexistence. In summary, this is a fantastic opportunity to bring a vacant property back into use during a difficult period for the economy, similar to that which is currently lawful and not to the detriment of the area. We would therefore urge members to take a pragmatic stance, as have the UK government, in granting planning permission for the proposed use.
Thank you, Mrs.
That's
Legg.
the end of the submission.
Thank you. A lot of information there, members. I do have Mr. Ray of Bidwell's, the agent, in the waiting room. Should you have any questions of clarification? Members, Councillor Corver, you have a question? Yes. Firstly, I will ask Mr. Griffin to invite Mr. Barney Ray into the meeting.
Chairman, Mr. Ray is not in the waiting room.
He's not arrived this evening. Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, Councillor Corver, we won't be able to answer your questions. We now move on to the ward members. No ward member wishes to speak this evening on this matter. So, members, have you any questions to ask of Mr. Pearson's presentation? We'll go with Councillor Vickers, please, first.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just got ahead of Councillor Moore. Sorry about that, Andy. But my concern is about the way in which the condition will be implemented. I've got bad experiences of
just a question, please.
Applications. Yeah, well, my question is, how will it be implemented? Because it's one thing to impose a condition; it's another one. It seemed to be difficult to ensure that it is implemented before the application comes into use. So it's kind of contradictory, really, until you've got the premises in use. How do you know that the sound reduction has been effective?
Thank you. Mr. Pearson.
Chairman, members, as you're no doubt well aware, we do not have the resources to proactively monitor every condition that we impose on every planning permission. We have to rely on the good offices of applicants as far as possible to implement conditions in an appropriate manner, bearing in mind that experienced agents will be aware that if there are subsequent complaints, for example, in this case about noise, and investigations are carried into what measures there are to reduce noise, it would become apparent if the noise monitoring condition hadn't been implemented correctly. Also, I think it's worth bearing in mind that given that the premises need a premises license, which I understand is renewable at regular intervals, you actually have more control over this use and these premises than you would over most that don't require any license and just require a planning permission. So, unless we've got good reason to believe that the applicants haven't implemented the condition correctly, then we would be reliant on reacting to complaints. If members are particularly concerned about this, I can certainly request that the enforcement section ask the applicant to notify us when the works have been completed, and I can see if we've got the resources available to go and inspect. But that may also involve officers from environmental health as well, because we in planning aren't noise experts.
Mr. Pearson. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. A question really about the preparation of the material beforehand. for the committee's consideration, and in particular the approach you took to the a petition that was received, and invalidating that petition. My question really stems from the fact that it appears to come from an organisation called friendsofnewbury.co.uk. I couldn't find that organisation on the web, and I emailed the contact and received no reply. Did you have any better luck validating that petition?
Again, the answer to that is that we don't have the resources to routinely validate submissions we receive in respect of planning applications. So we take them on good faith.
Thank you. Councillor
That's fair enough, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a few questions, so I don't know if you want me to ask them all or let other members speak. Me come back afterwards. Feel free to tell me to shut up if you want to, Chairman.
Question, and we'll see where we go.
I note in Mr. Pearson, section 6.16, it says there are concerns about the company. Do we know what those concerns are? About the background?
I think the case officer was alluding to concerns raised by objectors. I don't think we've got any grounds to of concern regarding the company.
Okay. And secondly, I note the sorry, Chair.
The call now, and we'll come back. He may cover your
question. Thank you.
Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. It's to do, Mr. Pearson, with the operating hours. I know that they are proposing 24-hour operation. Would it be possible? I presume it's within our entitlement as a committee to change those operating hours. Is that correct?
Yes, if members feel that they have good grounds for putting a more restrictive condition on limiting hours, then that's in your gift. Bearing in mind that the applicant has 6 months in which to take any condition to appeal that they don't agree with. It's difficult because for us in planning to give detailed advice on this issue, because we are unaware of what, if anything, the licence conditions might be in respect of these issues.
That was also my concern, Mr. Pearson. We're sort of working a bit blind here because we don't know what the conditions are of the licence, whereas the planning committee may want one thing and the licensing committee may have agreed something else. So we're in a bit of a quandary here, I would suspect.
Got a bit of help from Councillor Vickers, maybe. Were you on that committee, Councillor Vickers?
Well, I wasn't, but I was listening to it because, you know, on live in my house, and Councillor Moore was listening more actively than me because it's his ward.
Okay. Anything to add?
Yes, I was, and I don't know the outcome, but I formed the view from the discussion that it was very unlikely that the licensing committee either could or wished to make an hours condition as a result of the license. I think they are more constrained by the legal situation than we would be.
Thank you, Councillor.
In my view, I'm no expert.
Yep, you're away.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. I don't know if Mr. Pearson knows the answer to this. It's a shame that the agent wasn't present to answer some questions, but he talks about contributing to economic recovery. Do we know how many jobs this is going to create and what kind of income it might be likely to bring into the local area?
In the supporting documentation, the applicants claim that typically one of these premises would create between 6 and 12 jobs.
Thank you.
In terms of the economic contribution to the area, I'm no expert on business rates, but it would be an empty building becoming active again and therefore paying business rates. They also supply information that as an organisation across the country, they make quite a large donations to charity. I don't think that's a material planning consideration, but there's no, as far as I could see, I'd need to go back and have a look through their statement. I don't recall seeing any specific figures relating to wider economic benefits.
Thank you. And just a final question. I acknowledge what Mr. Pearson has said about moral issues not being applicable to the discussion tonight, but I'm just wondering if there is any kind of shop that we would consider to not be appropriate in the market square in Newbury. If we're happy to have gambling, would we be happy to have a sex shop, for example?
I'm not sure that's a question I can answer, Chairman.
I think that's something we'd address if it came to the committee in its entirety.
Yeah. I think in response to Councillor Culver's question, no, I think it's important to bear in mind that the building currently has planning permission for use for gambling, and it can revert to a betting shop anytime somebody wants to open a betting shop there. They don't need planning permission.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. That concludes the questions of clarity of yourself, and thank you for the way that you answered those. Members, we now move on to the debate on this application. And
Chair, sorry,
has his hand up.
I do beg your pardon. It's very late, and it was a question I was going to address to the agent had he been present. But I wonder if Mr. Pearson can help us. The application is for an adult gaming centre with bingo, I think. The application to the licensing committee was for a bingo centre. Now, again, I'm no expert on the differences here, but I just wonder whether the officers consider that's actually, a different application for a different purpose.
Again, I'm no expert, Chairman, on the operations of the licensing committee. All I can really do is address the planning application, and the applicants have made it very clear that they're going to have what when I was a kid were called one-armed bandits, and gaming machines, I suppose is the correct term, and online bingo games. So I think the information that we've been given, and you can find more on that in the operational brochure that was submitted, which is on the website. But I think the information we have in front of us is an accurate portrayal of what they intend to do.
thank you. Councillor Moore, your question stimulated a little bit more interest, and we've now got Councillor Wollaston, who's got a question.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think there's a big debate about whether this change of use is right or not. My concern, I think, is the hours proposed. And I'm not sure whether we have any ability to curtail the 24-hour that's proposed.
If you impose a condition restricting the hours of use, Chairman, members, then you would need to have good grounds for doing so. At the moment, you've got no objections from either the Environmental Health Service or the police about the proposed 24-hour use. So if you were to restrict the use and the applicant was to appeal the condition, we might find it difficult to defend that appeal. I think where you can gain comfort is that the fact that the licence needs to be renewed at fairly regular intervals, as I understand it, means that there is another form of control you can exercise if the operations don't go in the manner that the applicant says they will. It's worth noting that the applicant claims that, I think, they've got shops all around the country or similar premises all around the country, and they've never had a licence revoked, or so they claim.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Councillor Barnett.
Sorry, Chairman, I thought we were ready to open the debate, so I'll hold back until you open the debate up.
I'm just going to take a bit of time now because Councillor Moore came in there a bit late. Anybody else got any more questions for Mr. Pearson? No, then we will move on to the debate. Members, can I invite one of you to start the debate on this application in the market scheme, please? Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. I've looked at the this and the comments from Environmental Health with regard to this application. The agent is quite right in saying that we need to take a pragmatic approach to business, and that's a commitment we have as a local authority have made to prioritise economic recovery against the environmental and social impacts of any planning determination. So I have no issue with there being a gaming establishment in that building. However, what I do have an issue with are the opening hours. I see no reason to have a 24-hour gambling premises opening. We're hardly Las Vegas, and and this is hardly Caesar's Palace. You know, the marketplace can't be described as a strict gambling. So I would be more comfortable with restricting the opening hours. And if you actually look at what Environmental Health have said, they said the final sentence is, I understand you wish to impose a restriction on the opening hours, but I'm not sure that there's an EH reason to support this. But of course, the Environmental Health did go on to say that the police hadn't objected and there's no tannoy to be used. But if you look at what the other buildings, operations in the marketplace, the opening hours are, Zinc nightclub, I don't know whether that's still there or not, open till 3 o'clock latest on a Saturday. The Hatchet Inn open till 1 o'clock latest Friday and Saturday. Similarly, the Old Wagon and Horses, the Slug and Lettuce and the Elephant in the Market, they restrict their late opening hours to the weekends. And I cannot think that there's a great demand for 24-hour gambling in Newbury. And therefore, although I'm quite happy to propose that we accept officer recommendation, because I feel we have no reason not to, I would like to see a condition on the opening hours, that it opens until, I would look at this as an average 2 a.m. latest.
Thank you very much. That's very informative. Councillor Barnett.
Chairman, members, I'm totally in agreement with Councillor Cole, and I'd be more than happy to second the proposal. Having said that, looking closely at some of the type of operation and machines that and facilities that might be available there, certain clients or customers, if you like to say that would or be interested in participating in those facilities are people that clearly are addicted to that sort of type of operation. And therefore, to actually give them the opportunity to only be there for a limited period of time, I think would be the sensible way forward. And that's why I would very much support Councillor Cole's proposal that we need to limit it. Because I think if it was to be open 24 hours, it could well be a facility that could be occupied by individuals that organisation might not wish to accommodate. And also it would probably need a certain amount of staff that would need to be properly trained in making sure that undesirables didn't visit that particular facility.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. I also support Councillor Cole's suggestion about constraining the hours. I do consider that Mr. Pearson is probably right, that it's pretty difficult to work up the strongest of cases on this. Because the nuisance factor may be limited in terms of the noise generated within the club, The marketplace in Newbury closes down at different times during the week, and if I had to put timings on this, I think I'd be going for midnight Monday to Friday, and probably 3 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday to align with the nearby other entertainment facilities. But I think it's possible, and as such, as far as the nearby residents are concerned, at that time the marketplace becomes quiet. And I think even probably customers leaving that premises after the time that others are closed down might well then disturb that quiet. So I think I'd be there, but I would probably look to officers to help us frame the conditions there. Thank you.
Councillor Moore, any observation on the opening times?
Oh, opening.
I'm going to look at these conditions.
No, I mean 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. I think that's a big issue.
Thank you, Councillor Cant.
Thank you, Chair. I think I think my ideal position, I guess, would be that the opening times were restricted at the same time the betting shop was unable to be open. However, looking at the difficulties of imposing that, would it not be, my concern, I suppose, would be that it would become a magnet for people who would turn out to the pub at 11 o'clock at night or whatever, or an element of people who were in the pub anyway. And therefore, it might be reasonable to say that their times that we suggest imposing would coincide with the opening and closing times of the pubs in the vicinity. I see no particular reason why anything should be open after the pub shut. We expect that would give us some guarantee of peace for the local residents after the hours of pub shuts.
Thank you. Councillor Bennyworth.
Chairman, in total agreement with Councillor Cole and Councillor Barnett. I think in some ways it would be self-limiting. I think the cost of running a premises, staff premises, throughout the wee small hours of the morning wouldn't be economically viable, and I don't think it would be universally popular within the town. And I think limiting the hours to midnight during the week and up to 2, maybe 3 o'clock at the weekends would be acceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, I'm very much support what people have said. What I'd just like to contribute to the debate are two things. One is to I hope Councillor Moore doesn't mind me saying this, but he knows the town centre extremely well as he is a street pastor. So he's up there all night, many times a year, and he knows exactly what the noise levels and the state of the play is in the area better than any of us, I assure you. And what he says is absolutely right. I also commend what Councillor Barnett said. I think the fact that gambling is addictive is a good reason not to have it open 24/7. And listening into the licensing debate, it became clear that claim that they're going to provide 6 or a dozen jobs. They're not going to be full-time jobs. They are unlikely to ever have more than one person working there at a time, which is of slight concern, because if there is a disturbance, one person is probably going to lock themselves in the staff room, and they've got no support to deal with the situation. I also take issue with what Mr. Pearson said about gambling like this that we're looking at this evening being the same as a betting shop. My experience of a betting shop, and I don't gamble apart from once a year on a flutter on the Grand National, but when I do go in there to place my bet at the Grand National, it's all quite quiet. People are concentrating. There might be the noise of 1 or 2 televisions on with the race live, but it's a completely different atmosphere to what you call, Mr. Pearson, pinball machines. It's a very noisy environment. Now, I'm quite impressed by the sound report that we've got in our update sheet. It does look as though, and I say it does look as though, the measures are going to be adequate. But my experience of a planning application where I was the applicant was that it's one thing to have a claim that these measures will reduce the sound, but we had to spend a lot of money on simulating the real situation that these measures were proposed to deal with, and found that they actually didn't. But because this was affecting our own operation and not anybody externally, that was our problem. My concern is that this is a problem that could affect the residents upstairs. I'm thinking particularly of them. So thank goodness, I hope we agree to an hours condition, and the people living in those flats will at least be able to get some rest at night. So that's all I'd like to say. And I think we look as though we're ready to move to a vote on this. If we can, hours agreed.
Sorry, was that me again, Chair? I just wanted to add on the hours question that I noted that the agent, in response to one of the objectors, at one stage accepted that an hours limitation might well be possible, but then appeared to back off that subsequently. So if you want a reference to that, that's the note dated the 14th of September, the additional information. So I think I think, and then picking up Councillor Bennyworth's comment, we might just be pushing at a slightly open door there in economic terms, which of course is not our consideration in planning.
Thank you. Councillor Cole, maybe you could use this opportunity for consolidating maybe the hours that you are considering, so that I don't come back to you all to do a vote on the hours. What I'm thinking is opening times as suggested, 12 o'clock Monday to Friday, opening times as suggested, and I'll leave it to you to propose your two.
What I was going to say, Chairman, is I would suggest that the opening times are 8 a.m. to 12 midnight on Monday through Thursday and Sunday, if they indeed open on the Sunday, and on Fridays and Saturdays until 2 p.m, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And therefore I propose officer recommendation with those opening hours, if that's acceptable to others.
Yes, Councillor Moore.
I think Councillor Cole means 2 a.m.
2 a.m. Sorry,
and therefore that's actually Saturday morning and Sunday morning, 2 a.m.
Yes, it is. That's right.
Because it's carrying through Friday night and Saturday night.
Yes, that's right.
So as to assist everybody.
My counter proposal would be that if the operating hours for the neighbour next door, which is Zinc, is actually 3 a.m, which as Councillor Vickers tells you, I'm not because I'm a customer, but because I'm often outside there at 3 a.m. I can't see that we could have a justification for coming any much earlier than that.
And what is that time?
3 a.m.
3 a.m. Councillor Cole, we've got a consideration on that time because of that information.
Chairman, I'm quite relaxed about that.
Right. We'll go with Councillor Moore's suggestion.
On a Friday night, no.
Members, are we all generally happy with that? Because I don't want people to say, well, I'm not going to vote because I'm not quite happy with the hours. We're all happy with the hours?
Yeah.
Excellent. Well done. Therefore, before I put this to the vote, Mr. Pearson, Mrs. Armour, are we quite happy that we have collected all the additional conditions, those of hours, over and above those in the agenda and those on the update sheet, please?
I think so, Chairman. Thank you.
Happy? Mrs. Armour, you're quite happy?
Yes,
Jolly.
the only thing I just want to clarify is Councillor Barnett seconded Councillor.
Yeah, I'm happy with those amendments, Mrs. Armour.
Thank you. Well, I do have a proposer, Councillor Cole, and I have a second of Councillor Barnett, and the recommendation is for the Head of Planning and Countryside be authorised to grant the planning permission at 11 to 13 Market Place at Newbury. And I'll ask Mrs. Armour if she would conduct the name vote, please.
Chairman, I think Councillor Culver wanted to say something.
And also Councillor Cole.
Yeah, okay. Is this part of the debate, or is it, I mean, we've moved on now. I don't think I'm going to take any more. Thank you. I'm going to take the vote. Thank you.
Yeah, I have had my hand up for a while. Sorry, with respect, Chairman. It's just about another condition, whether it's.
I'm going to say we're going to call it an end to the debate, and I can call an end to the debate now.
Well, I think we've had a proposal that's been seconded. So should we take that proposal, and then depending on what happens on that proposal, we can then discuss any other proposal that wants to be made.
Thank you. Otherwise, it'll just run on. So I'll go back to Mrs. Armour. If you could conduct the name vote, please.
Okay, Councillor Barnett.
For.
Councillor Bennyworth.
For.
Councillor Cant.
For with the conditions.
Councillor Cole.
For.
Councillor Culver.
Against.
Councillor Hooker. Councillor Moore.
For.
Councillor Vickers.
For.
Councillor Wollaston.
For.
So that's, I apologise, I did it in the wrong order, Councillor Hooker, but that is 8 for and 1 against.
Thank you. I'm just got some problems here with my, there we are. Therefore, members, that application is approved. Thank you. We'll now go on to, thank you. That application is approved. Now we'll go on to the second application this evening, which again is at 11 to 13 Marketplace. And this is...
Chairman, sorry, I wanted to make a point about a condition.
He's frozen.
I think we've temporarily lost Councillor Hooker, so I don't know if it's worth, in his absence, I don't know if Councillor Vickers, we want to have a short break, if we can get him back.
That's probably quite a good idea, actually, a short break. I'm not going to actually leave my seat here because I'd like to press on as soon as he's back.
I think it might just be worth giving him a call, just seeing how he is, and maybe having a 5 minute, 10 minutes. I don't know what you would like to do, Councillor Vickers.
Could not Councillor Vickers deal with Councillor Culver's query?
Yes, yes.
I mean, it seems.
Yeah, I think I should, because it's clearly about the last application. If I'm quite happy to hear you, Councillor Culver.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Yeah, I wanted to make a point about a condition, because in the noise survey, it talked about the need to not be louder than 30 decibels between the hours of 11 PM and 7 AM. So that's not actually mentioned in the noise mitigation point 4 on page 41. So I was wondering, Mr. Pearson, if we could add something about the decibel levels.
Yes, Mr. Pearson, I sort of assumed that was taken as read, that the noise condition would adopt what the applicant themselves were saying they were aiming to achieve, which I think was the 30 decibel level.
The way I understand it, Chairman, is the application's been determined now, so we can't do any make any changes to the.
Just to put Councillor Culver's mind at rest, am I correct in thinking that that noise condition that we already have, and we've now agreed it, will in fact satisfy what she was saying, in that there's no need to actually set specific sound levels for specific times, because they are aiming to meet the 30 decibel level throughout.
And also, with the greatest respect, I did have my hand raised before the chairman called a vote, and I wanted to make a point there about a condition, and I wasn't allowed to make the point then.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that because I wasn't chairman at the time, so I don't think that would be proper.
Vice Chairman, I'm looking for guidance from my legal colleague on this.
I think the vote's been taken on the conditions on the agenda. I think it does reference the report, so presumably the details in the report are what's been accepted. I haven't read the report myself, so I don't know exactly what it says.
Chairman, I would have thought that the condition were to include what was on the update report, because that's the purpose of the update report, is it not?
Yes.
Mm.
So as far as I'm concerned, the update report is our additional conditions. We don't usually, when we're approving an application, make specific mention of additional conditions on the update report, because we take it as read.
Mrs. Armour, is it proper to just minute this concern of Councillor Culver and have it included, shall we say, as an informative that this is understood to be the case?
Well, I think what's been approved is the conditions within the update sheet and in the agenda pack. I think whether planning officers want to come back just to reassure Councillor Culver maybe at another time what exactly that is included and whether it covers her concern. I don't know if that's the best way of dealing with it.
Would that satisfy you, Councillor Culver? Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, we'll take our short...
I'm back in the room now.
Oh, he's back in the room. Way. Carry on, Mr. Chairman.
Are you happy, Mrs. Armour, that I take over as this application hasn't actually come to any discussion yet?
Yes, we haven't started at all. We were still discussing a point on the last application, and then we were going to have a short adjournment.
I wasn't privy to that discussion, and if I am anyway being questioned as to what I'd ask as chairman, then I'm happy to answer it. Now, the conditions I understand were as the update sheet and laid out in the agenda, and the conditions that were agreed by the committee with regards to the hours as discussed and agreed mainly with Councillor Cole. Is there any other issues I ought to be considering?
If I may just explain, I think Councillor Culver wasn't clear about what the noise condition as on the papers actually covered, whether it was going to take into account everything that was in the update sheet in the terms of the technical details, or whether we needed a sort of hours amendment to that noise condition.
We didn't add any condition.
No, out of the committee, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we didn't add any conditions though regarding the sound, did we? We were happy with the report. Nobody questioned that, and thought we were quite happy with the environmental officer's report on that. Anyway, it's been noted, and thank you, Councillor Culver, for bringing that up. And as I say, as chairman, I can curtail the discussion at any time, and I'm obviously conscious of time and moving these issues on. And obviously, one doesn't know what the question is going to be, but one has to be cautious of repetition. But we move on to the second application this evening. That is, as I said, 11 to 13 Markets Place, and this is for the installation of the signage. And this has come again to committee through 10 letters of objection. And I'll ask Mr. Pearson to make the presentation, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, members. This application seeks advertisement consent for the installation of associated signage associated with the use that was discussed in the previous application. The signs being one externally illuminated fascia sign and one externally illuminated projection sign. Just to clarify, I think that we don't seem to have had any specific objections from anybody to the signage, although we've recorded Newbury Town Council's comments as an objection. They seem to allude to the use rather than the actual signage. We have discussed the signage with the conservation officer, who is satisfied that the signage is similar to that which already exists in the marketplace and will have no more or no less impact than other similar signage in that area. It's the officer's view that the signage is reasonable and will have an acceptable impact on amenity. There are no highway objections to the signage. And just to remind members, there are only two reasons that a local planning authority can refuse an application for advertisement consent. The first one is on the ground of harm to amenity. The second one is on the ground of impact on highway safety. So no other issues really fall to be considered than those. Having said that, Chairman, the officer recommendation is that the advertisement consent be granted subject to conditions.
Thank you very much. We'll just clear the screen. we're all back together again. Thank you. We now come to the submission from the public. And again, no submissions from town council, objectors or supporters. But we do have a submission from, again, Mr. Ray of Bidwell's, the agent. Mrs. Lake, please.
Just share the screen, Chairman. And this is the submission. The proposed signage is typical of a central location and provides for a simplistic shop front of 2 elements. It's acknowledged that the site is within the Newbury Conservation Area, and comments from the Conservation Officer have taken into account when amending the proposed fascia design. The signage now aligns with other recently approved adverts in Marketplace by virtue of materials and depths, and have been considered acceptable as a result by both the Case Officer and the Conservation Officer. Members are asked to take into consideration this cooperative approach with the council and grant the advertisement consent from the proposed adverts. That's the
Thank you.
Submission.
Mr. Griffin, can you confirm if Mr. Ray has joined us?
I can confirm he's not in the waiting room, Chair.
Thank you. Therefore, we have no questions for him. So we move on now to the ward members, and there's no submission either from the ward member. So any questions of clarification of Mr. Pearson's very short presentation, members? Councillor Wollaston.
Can I just confirm this is not a backlit sign, but it's going to be front lit?
I believe we may have a plan we can put up, which Simon, can you help me there with a plan that might I might speak to? If members look at the plan, you can see that there are downlights on the top of the projecting sign, and gosh, it's quite hard to see, but I think there that may be internally illuminated on the fascia sign. Does that help, Chairman?
Yes, it does indeed. Thank you. We'll come back to the meeting. Any more questions, Mr. Pearson? No. I wait. No, we're all clear on that one. So I'll open this up now to debate. Who'd like to mention this? Jolly good. Councillor Moore, straight in. Thank you.
I just propose that we accept this this application.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor Wollaston, did you want to? Are you a second? I've got Councillor Cole. I'll take Councillor Cole as the second. Okay.
Right, Chairman, I'll second.
Thank you. No conditions as such were discussed. We're quite happy with the illumination where it is and the size. So there's no need for any clarification on the conditions. So I'll go straight in, then the recommendation with a proposal.
Chairman, please, I'd like to make a comment.
Right, thank you.
I'm not happy about this being back illuminated. I don't have a problem with the signage at all, but I don't want to see some bright sign in the middle of the marketplace.
Mr. Pearson, can you advise us how we can put the condition on that? Lumens, or are we going to say it's going not to be LED lights, or going to be very tricky?
Well, it partly depends, Chairman, whether other councillors agree with Councillor Wollaston, I suppose. But my view is that it's very similar to signage on other premises in the area. I think we may have a photograph which may help members, which shows signage.
I asked the question for some clarity so the members would know what in fact was possible and what is not possible.
Well, it's possible, but you could put a condition on that they don't commence the use until they've submitted further details of lighting on the fascia. I guess it's the fascia that Councillor Wollaston's concerned about rather than the projecting sign.
Okay. Members, any views on that? Councillor Bennyworth first.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just going to ask, apologies, Mr. Pearson, but Councillor Moore appears to be very closely and up to speed with Marketplace, whether he knows of any other backlit signage.
Yes, good question. Around there lots, but I've never really looked at whether the signs are backlit. My feeling is that the one-stop small shop about 2 doors down from here. It's probably got a backlit sign. I think you're right, Mr. Pearson. The picture from somewhere in the pack does illustrate that.
Mr. Pearson, one question: is the main advert over the top of the door illuminated? That's a question that's not been asked, I must admit. The hanging sign, we're discussing the hanging sign, but is it backlit of the actual one that goes across the top of the shop, or is that just a painted sign illuminated? We don't know.
Chairman, we do know both signs are externally illuminated.
Okay, thank you. I take your advice, Mr. Pearson, as to what condition we could put on to allay Councillor Wollaston's fears with the agreement of the rest of the committee. Mr. Pearson?
Well, there are all sorts of conditions you can put on there, and I'm really waiting to hear what the consensus from members is. As I say, you could put something up which requires them to send in further details of the illumination.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Vickers, you've got a point on this.
Well, I really don't feel strongly about it. If there was to be such a condition, I think, you know, isn't there a switch? You know, when the premises are closed, turn the lights off. But you know, it's not something that literally hits me in the eye when I go through the marketplace. Mind you, I don't go through there in the middle of the night, but I don't really have an objection. I think the damage is done in the conservation area by having big signs, and whether they're backlit or not doesn't really trouble me. I don't know whether it troubles others, but that's my opinion.
Councillor Moore?
I'm equally no issues with this really, but probably it would be good to get information out of the applicant to be sure where we're going. So a condition to do that would be good.
Councillor Cole?
Thank you, Chairman. I have absolutely no issue with the backlighting. It's the sort of thing that you see in any high street, and I think there's nothing particularly redeeming about the marketplace that would make it inappropriate.
Thank you. Would I be fair to go back to you all now and say that we're not considering a condition on the lighting before I go back to where we were just to do the vote? Are we happy that this can go forward? No conditions on the lighting? You're all quite happy?
No.
I think
right, we've got there. Right, now we've got
to if Councillor Moore and Councillor Cole, who proposed it and seconded, are happy to proceed without the condition, then we should go to the vote on that basis.
Thank you very much for that.
If there's any issue, we'll have to have another proposal and vote, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Wollaston?
Sorry, I feel very strongly on this. I don't think backlit signs in a conservation area are appropriate. I don't have any problem with the signage. I just think it should be front lit rather than backlit.
Is it a town centre?
Yep, it's still a conservation area.
Can I just point out that the sign at the museum, which is on a listed building, is backlit?
Sorry, my own views, it shouldn't be. But okay, I will go with the majority. That's what everyone thinks, but I think it's wrong.
Thank you. Then we will go with Mrs. Armour.
Oh, Chairman, please.
Yes, sorry. So we're going for the proposal that Councillor Moore and Councillor Cole has seconded. So as officer's recommendation without any further condition.
Thank you. That's where we came in. So I'll put it to the vote. Recommendation the head of planning countryside be authorised to grant the permission for application 20/01327 in the marketplace in Newbury. Mrs. Armour, if you conduct the name vote, please.
Councillor Barnett.
Or without conditions.
Councillor Bennyworth.
4.
Councillor Cant.
4.
Councillor Cole.
4.
Councillor Culver.
Against.
Councillor Moore.
4.
Councillor Vickers.
4.
Councillor Wollaston.
Against.
Councillor Hooker.
4.
Okay, so that is 7 for, 2 against.
Thank you very much. Then this application is approved. Members, we're 2/3 the way through. It's 7:45. Would you care for a comfort break, or would you like to go on to the last application. To show of
I'd
hands.
like to press on, I'd like to press on, Chair, myself.
Press on. Those who want to press
Press on.
on.
Press
raise your
on,
hand,
yeah.
please. Push on. Yeah. Okay. We'll go to the third application then. This is 20/1620. This is a full application at Denford House, Hungerford, Kintbury. And this has come to committee with a ward member call-in. Mr. Till, would you please present this application to the members?
Thank you, Chairman. Members, this application is for the erection of a single-storey, one-bedroom lodge for occupation in connection with the existing equine stud business on the Denford Park estate. The application site is located outside of any defined settlement boundary in the North Wessex Downs AONB. The application is being called to committee by the ward members in order to scrutinise the justification for providing a new dwelling in the AONB and the countryside. The case officer's recommendation is for approval. Objections to the application have raised concerns in respect of the impact on the character and appearance of the area, compliance with policy on new dwellings in the countryside, traffic movements and road safety, overlooking an amenity of nearby dwellings, the impact of lighting and the occupancy of the proposed dwelling. A total of 2 letters of objection have been received. The purpose of the single bedroom dwelling proposed is to provide accommodation for a security guard, which would consist of a garden monitoring room, a WC and sitting room, shower room and bedroom. The agent's design and access statement sets out the justification for the proposal. It's stated that the accommodation for a security guard is required in the interest of the equine stud business operating on the site. There is already a southern security lodge and the southern at the southern access to the site, and as there are no existing buildings at the northern access to turn to this purpose, a new building is required in order to provide oversight of the northern access. In respect of location, officers accept the justification for the new building. It's also worthy of note that planning permission has been granted for provision of a security lodge in this location on 3 previous occasions in 2007, 2009 and 2012. And while an application earlier this year was refused, this was on the grounds that insufficient information had been provided in terms of the need for a lodge in this particular location rather than in another building on the site. And the design was considered unsympathetic to the setting of Denford Park within the surrounding AONB. Officers now accept that placing a security lodge directly at the northern access to the site is both logical and specifically required for the purposes of the increasing security at this access point, which cannot be accommodated by repurposing an existing building in the location. Policy C1 of the HSA DPD sets out certain exceptions to the general policy of not allowing new residential development in the countryside, one of which is the provision of rural workers' dwellings. Policy C5 requires inter alia that it's demonstrated that the dwelling is essential to the continued use of land for the rural enterprise and that there are no suitable alternative dwellings available. As the employment of a security guard and provision of basic accommodation is considered a genuine need that is related to the rural enterprise on the site, officers consider proposals to meet with the requirements of that exception. Officers have recommended a condition on your update sheet to restrict the occupancy to an employee of the estate and their dependents only. Members, the proposed dwelling is of a very modest design and has a character and appearance that is traditional for gatehouses on rural estates. As the report notes, the Conservation and Design Officer has been consulted due to the fact that Denford House is a Grade 2 listed building and the wider estate comprises its settings. The Conservation Officer hasn't objected, and it's your officer's view that the proposed works have been designed after a fashion that is both in keeping with the estate setting and complementary to its rural surroundings. The low-key modest form will blend well with the walls and gate in this location, and the choice of brick and flint walls with slate tiles will not appear out of place against this backdrop. The low roof height of approximately 5 metres will prevent the lodge from appearing overbearing in the street scene, as will the significant setback of the lodge from the road. In terms of concerns regarding overlooking, the nearest dwelling, Denford Park Lodge, is approximately 30 metres from the location of the proposed lodge and would not stand to be directly overlooked by any of the windows in it or any ancillary security equipment at the gate. A condition controlling CCTV and restricting permitted development rights for installation of additional CCTV has been recommended. And a condition has also been recommended in respect of lighting in the interests of amenity in the AONB. In respect of highway safety, the proposed works would include the closure of one existing access, but alterations proposed also include accommodation of passing and turning points within the estate to accommodate the removal of this access. The Highways Officer does not have any concerns, as these altered arrangements will not significantly impact on the entrance and egress within with the internal layout alterations that have been proposed. Members, turning to the list of conditions, you'll note that these include measures for construction management, landscaping and ecology, parking and turning, and sustainable drainage. The update sheet also amends the wording of condition 5 in order to restrict occupancy to a person solely or mainly employed within the holding of Denford Park. Subject to the conditions recommended at Part 8 of your report and the amended condition 5 on the update sheet, officers recommend this application is approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Hill. Members, now we come to the public submissions. We have none from the council, parish council, no objectors, no supporters, but we do have a submission from Fowler Architects. Mrs. Legg.
Just sharing, Chairman, just check I've got the right one. Oh, one moment. No, this one. There we go. So yeah, this is, as you said, the submission from the agent. Make it a bit bigger. This application seeks planning permission for one-bedroom security lodge to be situated at the main entrance to Denford Park. Planning permission was granted in 2009 and 2012 for a lodge at this point of the estate. However, owing to various factors, other aspects of the site's development were prioritised at that time. The planning context has been changed since the previous approvals. However, the fundamental principles that issue in this application remain the same. While there is, and was at that time, an objective to direct developments to more sustainable locations, the need for security at the site is a material consideration that justifies the creation of a security lodge at this location. Policy C5 for the West Berkshire Housing Site Allocations DPD allows for the creation of new dwellings in the countryside for essential workers. Since the development of Denford Park began, and since the previous permissions were granted and subsequently lapsed, operations at the site have increased exponentially, and the need for a secure main entrance has grown alongside this. A full-time physical security presence is now essential to the ongoing operations at the site. While the applicant has looked at other options, there are no dwellings at the site that are capable of performing the functions required, and the main entrance is the only suitable location for the security lodge. The proposed building comprises a modest one-bedroom lodge that your conservation officer agrees would read as part of the wider estate in terms of its design and materials. It would not be harmful to the historic interest of Denford Park, nor would it detract from landscape and scenic beauty within the AONB. The single-storey building would be situated around 30 metres from the nearest property, and as such there are no concerns that there would be an overlooking effect or any other impacts on residential amenity. Necessary conditions relating to highways, ecology and landscaping have been agreed with your officers, and we are also in agreement that a condition tying the occupancy of the lodge to an employee of the estate is also required for sound planning reasons. we hope that you will support your officers in their recommendation for approval of this application and authorise them to grant planning permission accordingly. That's the submission, Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Legg. Mr. Griffin, I'm looking to see if we have Mr. Callan Powers in the waiting room.
Yes, we have Callan Powers and Samantha Ross in the waiting room.
Thank you. I'll ask members first. Do you have any questions of clarification on Fowler Architects submission, members? Yes, we do. Could you invite the two agents in, please? I've got Mr. Powers, I've got Samantha Ross. Good evening, Mr. Powers, and good evening, Ms. Ross.
Good evening.
Thank you for joining us this evening. I've got two members of the committee who've got questions for you, Councillor Vickers and Councillor Moore. I'll ask Councillor Vickers to ask his question of you. And Councillor Vickers, if you could, Mr. Powers, if you could just advise us which one of you will be answering the question, please. Councillor Vickers.
Right, my question is relating to condition 5, and you're alluding to this in your statement where you talk about it being essential to have this structure for an employee of the estate, which is a racing business. I wonder what this person is going to do that relates to security that requires them and them alone to live here. Because, you know, my background is in the military, and you have a guard room and you put your security staff in your guard room and you keep it manned. But this seems to be so vague that it could be the cleaner, the housekeeper, or the mucker out of the stables that lives here. But if it's sole purpose, the reason we're discussing it tonight is to be a security premises, then who is going to live there? Is it going to be an active security person or just any old person that is employed by the estate? That's my question.
Thank you. Mr. Powers, who'd like to answer that, please?
I'll happily answer that. It's a straight question, a straight answer. It's going to be a security guard. That is the entire point of the proposal, and it will be a security guard that lives there full time.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my question is about the security function. I note that there is already a lodge at the southern end, so a security function is already part of the estate. CCTV is considered as part of this application, and I can't quite understand why, with automated gates and a security visual approach to the access there, this function couldn't be achieved from elsewhere on the estate without building this new building.
Thank you. Before you answer that, Mr. Powers, Mr. Till, will you advise us, please, whether or not this CTV is a part of this application or not before Mr. Powers answers?
The CCTV forms an ancillary development, essentially. So it doesn't, in essence, form part of the works applied for, but it is an ancillary part of what having a security room would entail. And I believe that the question from Councillor Moore actually relates to whether it's necessary to have a guard present on site where one is capable of mounting CCTV in order to monitor that part of the site in the first place.
Thank you.
Yes, that's yeah. If I modelled the CCTV, I guess in my view the function possibly could be achieved by cameras at that entrance and controlled gates and being monitored somewhere else on the estate.
Mr. Powers.
Okay, so the north entrance is the main entrance at which all deliveries come and go. The southern entrance, which comes from the A4, is not suitable for arriving deliveries and large vehicles All major deliveries come through from the north gate, and there is not currently anything that so there's an automated gate there at the moment, and it is clear to the applicants that that is not serving their security needs as they would wish it to, as they need it to, and it's a case of being able to control where, whether certain people who are bringing deliveries needs to enter the site at all, and ensuring that they go to in the correct direction once they then enter the site. The unmanned situation has been found wanting, particularly with the increased activity at the site in the last few years.
Thank you. Councillor Colbert.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just wondering, I mean, presumably the security guard who lives in the property won't be working 24/7. So what would happen when they're not at work? They'd presumably be living in the property, but somebody else would be working in the guard room at the same time?
So as I understand it, they will obviously be there. There will be someone there 24/7. It may well be, I can't necessarily get deep into the detail of how the security is going to function when up and running, but I would imagine that they will be, when someone arrives, they are able to intercept, and if it's someone that doesn't, has a reason to be there but doesn't necessarily need to enter the site, they can engage with them at the edge of the site.
Thank you.
And it also says in one of the conditions, it talks about the kind of person who could live there. It talks about or retired. Why would a retired person live there if this is supposed to be a security guard? I'm a bit confused about that.
Well, I think that's a way that conditions are written standard when it comes to tying dwellings to essential workers. It may be that the council feels that it's not necessary. I think it's a generally accepted thing to ensure that you're not suddenly kicking widows out of houses, at such time that they become widows. But it's, the point of it is that the application is for a security lodge. It will be intended to be a security lodge. So if you feel that that is something that needs to come out of that condition, we wouldn't have a problem with that.
And would the occupant be paying rent to the landowner, or would it come with the job?
I don't think that's a planning issue.
That's probably not something I can comment on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. Just to go back on Mr. Power's answer to my first question, has the applicant considered turning the site around, if you like, and making the main entrance off the A4, and what the implications there might be, and using the existing security lodge?
You might not need to answer that question. It's not a part of this plan and application. We look at these applications as they're called. That's not a submission, but you might not to a very, very brief comment. Sure.
I mean, like I say, the southern entrance is not considered a suitable access for that purpose.
Thank you. Councillor Bennyworth.
So just one moment, Chair. Sorry, can you come to me afterwards? Thank you.
Yes, certainly. You're the only one. So that does conclude the questions of clarification. You're sure you don't want to come back, Councillor Bennyworth? No, right. Thank you very much, Mr. Powers and Ms. Ross, for attending this evening, and thank you the way you answered those questions. Mr. Griffin will now return you back to the waiting room. Thank you. Members, we've now come to the ward members' presentations to this evening, and we have Councillor Bennyworth and Councillor Cole. And as these two councillors have different views on the resolution of this application, the Constitution does allow me to offer both members 5 minutes to speak. Councillor Bennyworth has volunteered to go first, so I'll invite Councillor Bennyworth. Just bear with me 1 minute.
Sorry, Councillor Hooker, I think we've lost a few other people there. I
Oh,
think
have we?
we've lost Councillor Barnett at some point.
Ah,
It's
thank
back
you.
now. Sorry, that was my fault. And when I
Thank
clicked
you.
to remove Callum Powers, I
I'm back okay, don't worry.
Okay, we are all assembled. Good. Councillor Bennyworth, you know the format here. You have 5 minutes. Should you stretch into that area, I will give you some idea when you've been going 4 minutes, and then I'll ask in 10 seconds to go to conclude. And Councillor Cole, save me repeating myself, you're well aware of the situation. Councillor Bennyworth, when you're ready, I will start at your time.
Thank you, Chairman. Like most items that come before this committee, there's a weighing up of information from two sides. In this instance, a new build for operational and security reasons in the AO and B against the concerns of the residents of the neighbouring Denford Park Lodge. The residents have emailed me their concerns, which I hadn't understood and carefully considered. As a policy-led planning authority, we require very specific criteria when it comes to a new build within the countryside. Policy C5 of the Housing Site Allocation DPD seems to fit this application very well with regard to housing related to rural workers. And if I can refer to 4.41 of the document relating to the district's approach to the equine and racehorse industry, it goes on to say the council wishes to retain and support the expansion of this industry and its related specialist breeding and veterinary facilities, and in accordance with policy CS12, will support the provision of new residential accommodation where it is shown to be essential. From a site visit between the applicant's agents and my fellow ward members and I several months ago, we learned that this was the only suitable position as a main entrance for the estate from the north. The question of a more temporary building or hut was mentioned, but as a full-time security position, which would be operational for 12 months of the year, this was not considered to be appropriate, especially over the winter months. We learned that the provision of a lodge would allow for the better monitoring of traffic entering and leaving the estate and prevent tailgating, an additional security risk. And actually, what I was going to ask the agents just a moment ago was rather make the point that there's really no incentive not to have anyone other than a security guard at this security guard house, if you like. Overlooking has featured as one of the concerns for this build, but I believe that due to the staggered offsetting of the two properties and the distance between them, that this is not a significant factor. And I think the conditions placed on this application referred to by Mr. Till should give the neighbours some comfort that this building remains in use for its intended purpose. This is a sizable estate, the main house sitting in some 130 acres, with a further 160 acres of land nearby also acquired more recently. The stud is expanding its business and is a serious financial investment within my ward. This multi-million-pound business provides employment either directly or through ancillary businesses, such as stud staff, security personnel, farm managers, gardeners, domestic staff, vets, blacksmiths, feed merchants, bedding supplies. I could go on. And with bloodstock valued somewhere in the region of £10 million plus, notwithstanding the high-profile owner applicant, it's not unreasonable, in my opinion, to add this security feature. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bennyworth. Members, do we have any questions of clarification of Councillor Bennyworth's presentation? I'm patient. I don't. Councillor Bennyworth, thank you. Councillor Cole, we now come to you for your presentation. When you're ready, sir, I will start your time.
Thank you, Chairman. I do take a different view to that of Councillor Bennyworth. For me, there are lots of reasons to object to this. I'll pick three. New house in the countryside, the access off the road, and the conditions of occupation if this application is approved. Primary objection is this is a new house in the countryside. The justification appears to be that it's needed for security and that no other options available. Previous planning application refused. Proposal failed to demonstrate there were no other suitable alternative dwellings that could be made available to meet such need. We're told that's still the case. I've not seen evidence to back that up. Nevertheless, if that is really correct, there are plenty of houses nearby. The estate can buy one if it's really needed. And that, in reality, is what the estate is known to have been looking at doing. From one point of view, I know it'd be nice to have an extra house there. It's not actually necessary. Some of the committee have begun to wonder already. I explained to the applicant's representatives on site, combined with the extensive electronic security they now have at that gate, security there could perfectly well be provided by a guard hut, which nobody would object. And realistically, this, in fact, would better cover the 24-hour need. From another point of view, a comment from one of the neighbours seems relevant. I take this from an email that a neighbour sent to Kipbury Parish on the 7th of August, be it not actually to our planners. It's important to note that unless Denford House was to build a wall surrounding the entire estate, intruders with a vehicle or on foot are always going to be able to access a plethora of weak points in the hedgerow surrounding the estate, will not need access via any of the legitimate entrances. So security alone is not really a very good excuse for this new house in the countryside. In reality, any self-respecting raider of this estate would now use a four-wheel drive and go through a hedge. As far as the access is concerned, this is being changed to remove the two-way option. With the current two-way process, they get vehicles queuing on that road when one gate is broken. Horse boxes, they don't all leave at 2 a.m. for the airport. Horse feed supplies, horse manure removal. That's all before you get to the more usual things like the recycling trucks, delivery vans, even HRH himself on the rare occasions that he turns up, because he too normally uses this main entrance rather than the front one on the A4. The problem is that when you do get a blockage, you get vehicles having to back blind into the lane, competing with other riders, pedestrians, even cars. The block plan shows a lay-by inside and a slightly widened splay for the entrance being retained. Quite apart from the effect on others nearby, I'm just not convinced that this will quite do what even the applicant would want. Is that lay-by big enough for a couple of 16-tonners and a tractor-trailer trying to get out when, say, HRH and retinue or just a couple of delivery vans are trying to get in? In reality, the applicant won't want to be seen to be causing the road to be blocked. I think it's a pity the agent didn't bother to talk to the immediate neighbours to understand more of the reality there. For this to go through, I think the layout does need improvement. For the conditions of occupation, I'd ask you to look at today's version. It ties the estate a tiny bit more, or still reads like one for a retirement bungalow for ex-jockeys or their spouses. It even includes widows. Presumably someone forgot widowers, and not a permanent full-time guardhouse. If the justification is that a guard is needed...
1 minute, Councillor Cole.
Thank you, I'm nearly there. That wording doesn't even require the primary person to be there. To be a genuine guardhouse, it must be a permanent guardhouse. I suggest this, that if this application is to be approved, a simple condition be applied, restricting occupation to something more like a current employee of the estate capable of doing the guard job, if necessary a dependent while he or she is doing the job. This clause just doesn't look like one for a guardhouse. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Members, do we have any questions of clarification of Councillor Cole's presentation? No, we don't. I've got one question. Councillor Cole, did you read our professional highways engineers' comments in the agenda?
Did I disagree? Yes.
Thank you. You did read it. Thank you. No more questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. Members, we now go on to any questions of clarification of Mr. Till's presentation. We do. Councillor Vickers.
Yes, it really goes back to, I'm allowed to ask this question because I'm not sure he mentioned it in the presentation, but it's on the report. It refers to the history of the site and a North Lodge. I can't find North Lodge on the plans that were displayed to us during the presentation. Can it be clarified where North Lodge is?
Councillor Vickers, I think North Lodge is referring to previous applications for this building. South Lodge is an extant building.
So we're talking about an existing building being adapted, because there's on the OS map, there is no structure, no building within the red line or anywhere near it called North Lodge. I remember, I think it was the application in 2012, which was also controversial and where I was on the committee, and it was a site visit I attended, where again, it was contrary to policy and it was approved. And I can't remember all the arguments, but I think that was the North Lodge. But I'm just puzzled that it's not there on the map, and it does seem to be an important part of the context of this application.
Chairman, the North Lodge building, as I understand it from the planning history, is a building that was approved for purposes of providing a security lodge, and as the agent referred to in his submission, it was never.
I see. It was never implemented. I get it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I have no more questions of Mr. Till. Members, we now move on to the debate. Who would like to start the debate, please? Do hands up. Councillor Cant, well done. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's from the very clear recommendation of the planning officer, and the fact that this appears to be a completely coincidental activity related to the equine use of the estate. I, for one, think it's pretty drop dead obvious yes to the application. I'll be voting that way when we come to that. So I propose we move to a vote and vote on the recommendation given.
Thank you. I'll let the debate run. We've got some interest from Councillor Vickers, Cole and Bennyworth. So Councillor Vickers, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I disagree. My concern is condition 5, and I think Councillor James Cole presented that issue very well. And I think Councillor Moore and I alluded to it in our questioning of the applicant. The only purpose, the only reason for having this application before us is to provide a security lodge. I think that needs to be tied in with that condition 5, amended roughly in the way that James Cole suggested. I'm not entirely happy that the security arrangements require there to be a physical security lodge, but I think we have to take it at face value what the applicant has said, and I don't have the knowledge of the racing industry that Councillor Bennyworth has, but I do take the point. There are various kinds of ways in which security might need to be imposed. You know, valuable racehorses, it may not necessarily be theft of the racehorse. There are all sorts of other valuable things, even information about the nature of the training regime. I could guess, you know, that somebody getting their way into the site for one reason might actually have a different purpose altogether. So I can accept that there is a reason to have a physical manned presence at this main security gate. But I think that the person providing that for the daylight hours when things are busy must be the person that lives there, and not the retired or widow of somebody who could have any other job. I mean, I accept what the applicant said in answer to my question, but that's not what the condition that is here. I think we need to tie that down very firmly in that condition.
And what are you suggesting? Not leaving it loose?
Well, I think Councillor James Cole came up with the wording that it should be for the occupation of a security guard and their dependents, full stop. And it's up to the applicant to find other arrangements for housing that person if and when they retire.
Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. I support this application. Precedence has been set because previous permissions for a North Lodge have been granted. And I think Councillor Vickers and I were probably the only members on this committee who were sitting on the planning committee in 2007 and 2012 when previous permissions were granted. And I certainly visited the site when it was being developed, as the planning committee had a visit to the site, and I was really quite impressed with the equestrian facilities there. It is a large estate, and traditionally estates do have lodges at both entrances, and I think it's perfectly acceptable to have a lodge at this entrance to home and house a security function. I wouldn't for 1 minute think that it needed to be 24 hours, because it's more to do with deliveries and people coming in and out rather than anything else. But I think a physical presence on site is essential, and therefore I'm happy to second Councillor Cramp's proposal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And your consideration of the amendment of the condition occupancy?
Well, I think, to be honest, I think the occupancy condition is probably a generic one, so that if somebody, if the occupant dies in generally in tied accommodation, then their widow isn't thrown out on their ear the day after the incumbent dies. So I'm sort of quite relaxed about that, quite frankly, Chairman. I think it's a general condition with an agricultural tie.
Thank you. Councillor Bennyworth.
Thank you, Chairman. Just picking up from that as well, and I touched on it earlier, I don't see that there's any benefit whatsoever to the applicant in having anyone other than a security guard at this site. It's entirely what this project is about. And I'm sure, being a responsible employer, that the applicant would, if in the event of a security guard turning up his toes, then they'd find alternative accommodation for his better half. So I don't see that as being a material factor, to be honest with you. And I also would be in support of this application.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Vickers. Councillor Vickers is back in again. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I would not support this application without the amendment that I proposed, the condition. And for this reason, it is not a generic tied cottage situation. You know, normally you provide tied cottage anywhere on the estate. And, you know, yes, you could when this person retires, they can go and live somewhere else. Well, they must live somewhere else in this case, because this building is there solely for the purpose of providing a security function. It's not just a building for the, I don't know, for the gamekeeper or somebody else who can live anywhere on the estate as a grace and favour accommodation. It's got to be tied down. I don't think we can be so naive as to accept what an applicant says, because I can envisage a situation where we allow, because we leave the condition as it is, we allow an ex-security guard to carry on living there, and then we get an application for yet another building somewhere near the entrance. And, you know, I know it may sound ridiculous, but it's quite possible that you end up with a small settlement around this gate if we don't have this condition. I don't see what the problem is, really, with having a tighter condition.
Councillor Camp.
Can I just plead with fellow councillors to try and disentangle the question of potentially micromanaging the exact nature of the tenancy from what we're being asked to approve? I mean, I think we've just got to consider the things separately. As far as I'm concerned, this is exactly the same as any other application that we receive. Place all sorts of carve-outs on, well, what if the applicant does other things after the event? With this, well, that's an enforcement issue later, isn't it? But surely we should concentrate not on micromanaging the exact nature of the tenant who lives there, but on the function the building is provided for. And if we accept the presentation of the applicant that this is for security purposes, and I think that case has been, for me, clearly made, I think we should move away from discussing whether or not possibly some odd person might be a few weeks in there when they weren't strictly speaking on security, and say, well, actually, you know, that doesn't look like that will happen. We hope it won't, but it's not for us to really micromanage that going forward. So I wouldn't propose, exactly as Councillor Cole suggested, that we accept the generic condition that this building is only for the purpose of security.
Thank you. Councillor Cole, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I'm keen to move this on. I think we should go to the vote. I agree with Councillor Cant. We shouldn't micromanage this. We shouldn't assume or suppose anything. We have to take this at its face value, that it is there as a security lodge. And quite frankly, I think the applicant will be foolish indeed if they are so keen on security not to ensure that there is an appropriate person living in that lodge for security purposes.
Thank you. I will let Councillor Culver speak.
Thank you, Chairman. If Councillor Vickers wants to propose an amendment with regard to condition 5, I'd be happy to second it.
Thank you. We've got a proposition on the table already, so we can't do that. So I'm going to go take this to the vote, and I've got a proposer of Councillor Cant, and I've got a seconder of Councillor Cole, and with no conditions to add apart from what on the update sheet and the agenda. So the recommendation is for Head of Planning and Countryside be authorised to grant the planning application at Denford House, Denford Park. Mrs. Armour, if you'd be kind enough to conduct.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say just before is that I believe in terms of the update refers to condition 5 when it should be condition 7.
Oh dear, well done. Well picked
so
up.
We're approving it in the basis of updating condition 7.
Thank you.
So this is for permission. Councillor Barnett.
For approval.
Councillor Bennyworth.
For.
Councillor Cant.
For.
Councillor Cole.
For.
Councillor Culver.
Against.
Councillor Moore.
Against.
Councillor Vickers.
Against.
Councillor Wollaston.
For.
Councillor Hooker.
I'm for.
Okay, so that is 6 for and 3 against.
Thank you very much, members, for that discussion, and that application has been approved. Mr. Till, no advice regarding appeals that you need to advise us about?
No, there's nothing further since the last meeting, Chairman.
Thank you so much. Members, thank you very much for your contribution this evening. And with that, I close the meeting at 8:23.